Thank you for joining us. This is a Greater Tacoma Community Foundation Learning Panel, and I'm Megan Sukys, Chief Strategy and Communications Officer with GTCF. We like doing this kind of work and this kind of conversation because continuous learning is one of our core values. Through all of our work, I think we can all agree that we've seen how sharing real-life successes and failures can help all of us learn and grow in our ability to build a thriving Pierce County. And I also want to thank KBTC as our learning partner in doing this. Because of KBTC's partnership, not only are we going to get to learn from this group of women today, but other people are going to be able to learn in days and weeks to come and far and wide, all knowing how Pierce County really knows what it takes to build a great community. We're talking now because it's not easy to run a nonprofit. It's not easy right now, for sure, but I think we can look around the room and say it's never been easy. But if it comes to leading in Pierce County, we all have a really good thing, a real great advantage, and that's we're not alone. That's how we do it here in Pierce County. We do it together. And that's what our expert panel knows a lot about. Joining us is Helen McGovern Pilant, who for many years was the Executive Director of Emergency Food Network and is now dominating the world in retirement. Liz Dunbar, who also ruled the world with Tacoma Community House and is also retired. Miriam Barnett, who ran YWCA Pierce County. Miriam, I think you're also retired. And Maureen Fife, who's running Tacoma Pierce County Habitat for Humanity, and you are approaching retirement as well. Well, thank you all for joining us today. I've given your titles and what you do, but when all four of you are together, you take on a new name.
Right.
Who are you when you're all together?
Fab Four.
Fab Four.
The Fab Four. I love it. And we're going to find out how they got the name the Fab Four. But first, I want to go a little bit into some of the experiences you've had that really shaped how you lead and some of the inside tips and tricks that have made you guys successful and could help all of us. I'm going to start up high with the success. Those definitely teach us a lot. So I want to know from each of you about a success you had that really shaped how you think about leadership and helped you as you moved forward. And I want to start with you, Miriam, because you got one of your biggest successes on day two at the YWCA. Yes. What happened?
Yeah, well, thank you, Megan. So on day two at the YWCA, I had the receptionist come to me and say, I don't know if anyone told you this, but when someone's evicted from the shelter, which happens because they were violent towards a staff member or another client, they can appeal the eviction in writing to the shelter manager, but if she doesn't overturn the eviction, they can come and meet with you in person. And there's somebody here right now to meet with you. And no one had told me that, by the way. So I said, okay, well, bring them in. And I, to be very honest, had no idea what to do. Now, I came into the YWCA job not as an expert in domestic violence. In fact, I never worked in the field. I had done 15 years in the arts and then had been at the Greater Tacoma Community Foundation raising money for the Fund for Women and Girls. So here I am, really not knowing a lot about the dynamic yet. In 16 years, I learned a lot. And I didn't know what to do, so I decided just to ask her to share her story with me, and I would just listen. And I asked her if it'd be okay if I took notes, because I didn't want her to get suspicious if I started writing something down, but I really didn't want to interrupt her. So if a question came up, I wanted to be able to write it down. So she agreed I could take notes. And by the way, she was bigger than me in that she was taller. It was July. I started on July 5th, so this was July 6th, so it was summer, wearing a tank top. I could see her muscles. They were bigger than mine. She had more tattoos than me. At the time, I had 0. I now have 3. Maybe I can say she inspired me. And she started talking. And you know, when you give somebody that opportunity and they're angry, you have to just be prepared to hold that space. And so I just really want to share how important it is when you find yourself maybe in a situation where the best thing to do is to listen, is I visualize myself holding a bowl so that all that anger goes into the bowl and not into my soul. But I'm still fully listening. So she did talked for about 20 minutes nonstop. It got loud. I did leave my door open, by the way, for safety. And when she was done, I thanked her for the courage it took to share her story. But I explained how every story has at least two sides, and now I needed to go get the side of the staff. But I would get back to her the next day at a given time, and because at the time, we never just kick somebody out, right? We look for other places for them to be. So I had a little bit of time. So I talked to the staff, got their side of the story, did not overturn the eviction, called her exactly when I said I would, thanked her again for sharing her story, told her I wasn't able to overturn the conviction, the eviction, and she said, "Thank you so much for listening to me." And she left willingly. There was no police involvement. There was no anger in the actual exit. So that really informed the last 19 years of my life, how important it is to listen, and especially if you don't know what else to do, that's a tool you can always fall back on. So,
thanks, Miriam.
Yeah.
While we're very early is your day 2, Helen, I want to turn to you because one of your big successes began right away when you joined Emergency Food Network. What was that?
Yeah, it did, Megan. My background was commercial real estate. I came from the business world to follow my heart into running Emergency Food Network, and they owned the warehouse, and it's in a very strategically well-placed piece of property in Pierce County. It's in Lakewood, so good shopping, good eating, and close to the freeway and the city streets to get around. And so I immediately looked across the street, and there was a 2-acre piece of land that was there that belonged to a family that had had it for decades. It was being rented, but it was one of the heirs had it. It was very famous because they raised longhorn steer that were in the Puyallup Fair. So they were holding on to that. There were no cows there when I was there. And I began immediately trying to negotiate to buy the land. And it took a while, because it turns out he was really lonely and really liked to have a reason to have anybody talk to him. And he was a long haul trucker, and so we'd meet up at, gas stations and talk about this property. And finally, he agreed. At the time, what year, 2013, that we paid $400,000 for that property, and that seemed like a lot at the time. I now know the property next door, which isn't quite as big, they're asking $1 million for, so it was a good investment, but it was very strategically looking forward. Not being so caught up in where are we now and what works now. And, fast forward to a couple of years ago where they started using the property, and now it just has its brand new 20,000 square foot second warehouse on it. So really planning for the future, the moment that you are, that you get the wonderful opportunity to start leading an organization.
You had an idea about what legacy really means.
Absolutely. Yeah, and getting it, I also was a little teeny bit of a manipulator because shocking, because we wanted to start using the property quicker for parking because there was no parking, and Emergency Food Network has a tremendous volunteer base, but the city wouldn't let you build just a parking lot, but if it had community good, we could do it. So there was a community garden there for quite a while that vegetables and starts went out to the neighbors so that we could have a parking lot.
Thank you, Helen. Liz, for you, when you think about successes that really shaped you, what comes to mind?
So we talked earlier about this, and I'm going to change it a little bit. So I think the most obvious success for Tacoma Community House was the fact that we built a new building, which we desperately needed. But I want to talk a little bit about how we got there in the first place. So when I first arrived, we were already crowded, and we knew we needed more space. And in fact, there had been a feasibility study commissioned by the previous executive director, and the result was no, you're not ready, you can't take on a big fundraising campaign, it's not going to work. And so that was my blueprint. I read that feasibility study and said, these are all the things that we're lacking. here's what I need to do to get us in a position where we can. And so that's what I did. And so we worked at it, for a few years to get to the point where we could do another feasibility study that said, yes, you can be successful. And then we were, as with all construction projects, we started out with a goal of $8.5 million, and then the building kept getting more and more expensive. And in the end, it was $13.5 million. But we were successful at raising all that money and building the building. And but we wouldn't have been if we hadn't used that blueprint of what was lacking as a guide to what we needed to do to really turn things around and make it possible. So sometimes those setbacks aren't really setbacks. They give you direction and what you need to do. The other thing I wanted to say about that is that a lot of people get really nervous about fundraising, and particularly raising a big amount of money like that. And we have all done it. And I can only speak for myself, but I found it rewarding. I found it fun. And I encourage people to try it, because it really was a great experience. We found such a good response from this community. And virtually all the money we raised was really locally. And just people were very interested in learning about the organization and how they could help. And so I found it really enjoyable to work on such a big campaign. And I think, I can't speak for the organization today, but I think that, we also built a much bigger donor base that can continue to support the organization even after the building's done.
Thanks, Liz. And Maureen, I've been asking about success. The success you have is not just success, it's audacious success.
Yes.
What was that big learning moment for you?
So when I think back, we built a community that was an audacious goal for us. We really wanted to lean into sustainable design, and the goal was, we had this beautiful piece, 7 acres of land, and we wanted to build a community, and that when someone would drive through that community, they'd say, that's a great neighborhood, not that's a habitat neighborhood. So we set into this audacious vision, and it was pretty amazing to invite people in to sort of that planning and strategizing. How excited everybody got, back to Liz's point of sharing that vision that got people excited enough to open their Rolodex, whoa, that is an old term, open their networks to us, and to open their wallets to us. It was pretty amazing. I learned from that 30-unit project. I mean, it ended up having about 100 kids that lived in that 30-unit development, 6 languages spoken, beautiful, sustainable design. It is still my favorite neighborhood to drive through. But from wanting to achieve that, I learned big vision, big ask. That people that would catch that vision and want to be part of it, they were very appropriately ready for the big ask because they wanted to see it happen. So that was a huge learning curve to me, and always fundraising is still terrifying to me, but we have such a supportive community that I'm not as nearly scared of it as I was before.
So we love successes. It's awesome to hear about them. It's inspiring, but at least for me, I sometimes go, oh, good for you. That's awesome. Because I think about the hard times. So that's what leads me to kind of go to that next step, which can be even more instructive, is failures. And maybe we won't go so far to say failure, but the thing that this is not what I meant to have happen that taught you. And Maureen, I want to stay with you to let you lead us first as you think about failures or experiences that really taught you. What comes to mind?
So surprisingly enough, the same project that was all that success is also the same project that brought surprises with it and was really teaching me lessons about don't get over your skis, really know your financials well and the cash flows when you're building something that costs 3 or 4 times as more as any other project you had. That having the right skill sets within your organization to manage your work. I think that was a big piece of it. Sometimes as we grow our organizations, sometimes what we need outgrows who we have in those seats. And it's hard to be honest with yourself about that, but you need to. You're bound to the organization. That's the goal. The organization has to be successful. So you need, I think, reading financials, knowing your tipping point, where that is, and seeing that coming far enough ahead of you so that you can predict that, you can address it. You're not blindsiding anybody, which gets sort of to my other piece about, I have always tried to be brutally honest with my board. If we have a challenge, they're going to hear about it. If things are going well, that's great too. But they all, with sharing challenges with them, I have incredible expertise on my board. So why wouldn't I use it? Bring them into the room where it happens and let them really chew on whatever problem we might be addressing. So that honesty has served me well over the years. And so that was it.
Thank you. That is instructive. And Liz, when we talked a bit about those kind of failures, you hearkened back to another time that gives a lot of people indigestion, the Great Recession in 2008. What was your experience?
Yeah. So, and there's similar theme here to what Maureen was saying, because I was still pretty new at the community house, and I was frankly caught flat-footed when the impact of the recession really hit our organization. We didn't do the right kind of financial planning and anticipation, and when we finally did do that planning, we had to lay off 20% of our employees. And that was very painful. Painful to them, but painful to me, especially because the community house has a culture of being a family, and people really cared about each other. And so that was something, a very hard lesson that I learned, that you need to have, again, the right people in those jobs who can help you do that financial forecasting. And I think in nonprofits we tend to always look at what was our results last month or last year, and we're not as good on the forecasting side. And I think that if I have any advice for people is figure out how to do that forecasting, because we didn't, and we could have, had we done that, I think we could have planned better, softened the blow, maybe not had to take such a big hit when the funding declined. So that's something I learned.
Liz, was there something as well around how the layoffs were executed?
Yeah, so that was another painful lesson. I think we thought, the management team thought, well, we want to keep these people as long as we can. They do good work. We want to keep them on board as long as possible, but we also want to give them a chance to find another job. So we gave people 6 weeks' notice, which we thought was a very kind thing to do. In hindsight, it was not. It was, we had survivor guilt for the people who were still there, working side by side with someone they knew was leaving. It was very demoralizing for everybody, and I would not do that again. I would rather give people more severance and let them go out and look for another job than have us all be in that very painful space as long as we were. So that was a very tough lesson to learn.
Thank you for sharing that, Liz. And I think that, again, it's hard to talk about failures, but boy, does it save other people from hitting some of those same failures. We can make our own failures. We can do all brand new failures. And these are things that aren't obvious. You would move forward in one way. And so it's so valuable to hear from this kind of challenges and what happened. For you, Miriam, what came up when you thought about failures that really taught you?
So, excuse me, I changed the word to maybe opportunities. Cup half full, so failure is just a hard word for me. But what I want to talk about is boards. And I speak about this. I am a board member. I've always been on boards. But when I started at the YWCA, our board president changed every year. And the first couple years, I couldn't have asked for anybody who was more different than me to be building a relationship with. So I'm very relational. I come from an arts background. My first board president that I had a challenge with was a former banker. She thought very differently than me, loved spreadsheets. I don't love spreadsheets. They're not quite artistic enough for me. And so it was really a challenge. And I have a mantra that I will share with you that because of these experiences I have come to adopt, which is you don't get to hate your board and they don't get to hate you. And if you're in a situation where either of those things are happening, someone has to leave. It's either you or it's them. And I've literally had those conversations. But what I found, and it was different every time, because every year, like I said, first 6 years, and then I got that changed to where at least I had somebody for 2 years, because it takes a year to get in a rhythm, right? And then you're starting all over again with a completely different personality. Is if I sat down with them over coffee or tea, like never underestimate the value of coffee or tea. And I had a resource, and you can find these different resources that are color-coded. You know, this one was called the Herman Miller Brain Index that another board member has shared with me, but it's basically 4 colors, and I was definitely red, yellow, relational, people, and my board president at that time was green, blue, which is spreadsheets, which is completely different way of thinking. And when you sit down, and I would share that tool, and I would say, first of all, do you agree that we're very different? Because by this point, we're already butting heads, right? And they would agree. And then I'd say, so would you then agree that if we can figure it out, we're going to really move the YWCA forward because we're going to cover all the bases, right? Mm-hmm. And then I would share the tool, and one person loved it and one person didn't like it at all, but at least it started a conversation, and it worked every single time. Mm-hmm. So it helped me understand a different language I needed to speak if I wanted to connect with them, but it also helped them understand my language. So you don't get to hate your board, and they don't get to hate you. That was a big learning for me.
I can see that as a mantra. You don't get to hate your board. They don't get to hate you. You don't get to keep saying it. Helen, for you, I'm sure no failures.
Hardly.
What comes to mind when you think about it?
Well, I love listening to Liz say, we did a feasibility study, then another feasibility study, and another feasibility study. That would have been a good idea. Or any kind of thing that looked like a strategic plan. My mode of operating was I would ask myself if that was a good idea, and I would say yes. And then we would just jump into it because it was such a good idea. And one of the things that comes to mind was there's a lot of food deserts, and I had Kevin Glackencoley and I used to go to conferences together, and on the way back we'd solve the problems of the world, and sometimes they worked great, like spring break bags for kids to take home. Mm-hmm. Great idea. Mm-hmm. Mobile food pantries run by EFN, maybe not the best idea. Seemed like the best idea. We were not in the food pantry business. We didn't have semis to spare. We had people who were eager to design them and tell us exactly how to run them. Mm-hmm. So that was a direction that probably could have used, at least one more mind than mine, saying it was a good idea or a bad idea. Now there's mobile food pantries, and it's run by food pantry people, And it is a great idea. So so I learned to do a little bit of strategic thinking. I honestly still ask myself a lot and answered yes, but probably still do. But so then the energy went into what do we do well, and what can we do well, and where should we go? And what came out of that was purchasing dairy, because you could give people cornflakes all the time, but as you know, when you go to the grocery store yourself, there's often not dairy. So starting expanding our food purchase program, that was strategically a better idea. But
Success.
yes.
There it was.
Yes, finally.
Well, certainly what we're learning and what we know about leadership in Pierce County is not unique to Pierce County. We could teach the world how to do everything better. But I think a lot of that comes from something unique about Pierce County. And I'm wondering, from each of you thinking about that, what is there about Pierce County's history, culture, leadership styles that you think is important for people to know if they're going to be successful here in Pierce County? For you, Liz, is there anything that stands out?
Well, I have a feeling we'll all say the same thing,
Yes.
but so thanks for letting me go first. But it's a collaborative culture. I think I have worked in Seattle, King County. I've worked in Olympia, and this is by far a much more collaborative place where people are interested in working together. We don't have enough resources to do everything on our own, but we know we can have more if we work together, to collaborate, to work in partnership and complement each other instead of competing. And I see that, in the Human Services Coalition, which we were all very involved in, and in lots of other ways, that it's really just kind of part of the culture here is that expectation. And I think when new people come into this community, I try to let them know that up front, that this is the expectation, that that you work with others and partner, and not just try to be out there on your own and competing. So I think that's a big part of it.
And that brings me, Helen, to you. And you had a great idea, another great idea when you first started EFN that relates to this. What was your idea?
Well, as I mentioned, I came from the commercial real estate world, and I'd been on lots of boards and everything, but I had never run a not-for-profit. And I was handed an organization with a great reputation and had done a lot of things, but David Audie would tell you that management was not his strong suit at all. And so I looked at all these books, and it was like, zero-based budget. Okay, I've been on elected official. That makes sense. Really? They don't want profit at the end of the year? Is that something they're supposed to do? I don't know. Mm-hmm. Well, Liz had been the interim at Emergency Food Network before I got there. So we had formed, but she got her job. She was going to Tacoma Community House, so she was kind of like, "My good luck, you can call me." She was very helpful, but she was there for just a moment. And Miriam and I had been in ALF together. And I knew Maureen from the community, and also Robin Lester, who at the time was at Courage 360 that became We. So I sent out an email for a lunch, and I put in the subject line, Fab 5, because there was 5 of us. And could we please get together, because I have all of these questions. That was in May of 2009. Robin has since retired and lives in Olympia, so we don't get to see her very often. But we are approaching almost exactly 16 years that we have gotten together. At first it was monthly, sometimes it's every 2 weeks. We're going out tonight to talk about all of you. And we haven't seen each other for over a month, and so we have so much to catch up on. But it was our cone of silence room. We could talk about everything. We could talk about, no, don't hire that person, did you know? Or hire this person, it's really great. Or anything we could talk about, because it's just really hard when you're the leader to have somebody at that level who you can talk about, I made this really bad decision, or help me through the good decision, or just share those times with you. But I think what Pierce County, it never dawned on me that people, they could be competitors for funding, or, it just never dawned on me at all that I couldn't call these people for help. And that was 2009, and a few weeks ago, I'm currently at the Human Services. Somebody who shall remain nameless said, we're taking grant money away from everybody in the United States, and that morning it's a call from Kathy. Where are you going? How are you doing? What are we going to do? How does philanthropy help you? Who are we going to talk to? I mean, it's just, that's what it's like here. It's just, it is different.
Miriam, did you find that you were in Whatcom County before you moved to Pierce County? Was that your experience as well?
Definitely. I ran agencies in Whatcom County for 13 years before I moved here in 2000. And I will say, when I moved here, right away, I knew Tacoma was really different in a special way, because it was very welcoming. And it wasn't like, oh, you're not from here, you know, we're going to treat you different. It wasn't like that. And I also realized people that were raised here, maybe they went away to college, but so often they come back to Tacoma. So there's deep roots and deep love in this community. And I just think that it does feel different. Look at this right here. Look at all of you in this room. I don't know another community that's doing a nonprofit cohort like this that, you know, I'm pretty sure it's gratis, am I right? Like, you're not having to pay $1,000, $2,000 like so many of them, right? Because this community believes in supporting each other and that all boats rise. So I think that's pretty great. I mean, the CEO Women's Group, I could go on and on of things that I haven't seen in other communities that I do see here in Tacoma. So I think we're all very lucky, because leadership is hard, but if you have each other, it's easier.
And Maureen, you back up a lot of these ideas being part of the Fab Four, but you offered us another insight into the idea around funding.
I think ditto on what they said, but I will say that, you know, we are a blue-collar, timber roots kind of town. We don't have the number of family foundations or family of wealth that King County has, or Seattle or Bellevue. And so it is often the same funders funding everything. So I think the thing that I learned is not just call your board for advice, call them. They know everything that's going on, and they talk to each other. So, I mean, I was blown away when I moved here. Tacoma is the smallest town on the planet. Everybody knows everybody. Oh, I went to school with them. That's my cousin's friend. Everybody knows everybody. And I would say, once again, my plug for being brutally honest and frank with people is that if you sneeze, someone's going to know you sneezed. So it is, be upfront and honest about that, because your integrity is really your calling card, and it is your currency out there in this world. And so I can call any one of you, and I have called a lot of you for advice before and had coffee with you. So the welcoming and the open door is very refreshing. Yeah.
So for all of you in your experience, you've passed some of those big challenging gates we've had in recent years, the 2008 Great Recession, COVID, and here now, those of us in the room and beyond may also be feeling this as a time that feels pretty epic with challenges. And at least for me, it seems every new challenge is like, no, this is different. We survived the last one, but this one is totally different, and this is the end. But it's not. Spoiler alert, it's not. And I know that because I got a chance to talk with each of you. And I have been feeling maybe like other people, that kind of, but as I talked with you, I was filled with so much inspiration. And especially when I asked you, what kind of hope or advice can you give to other people who are sitting here now and thinking, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? What advice comes to mind? I'm going to start with you, Helen, because you are right in the thick of it, doing your retirement as interim at Human Services.
Yeah, my retirement budget right now is $491 million, and 6.6 of it is general fund money, and all the rest of it is federal and state money. In one division, ADR, they have 89% of their money is federal. So, you know, we went through the exercise and figured that out, and immediately everybody in the department were, okay, if we lose it, how do we do what we're supposed to do? What do we change? Where do we turn? Because we have these commitments to the wonderful people in our community, and we can't stop doing that. And some folks even said, you know, I'm so close to retirement, you know, I can do, I mean, they really, really focused on what we're doing, the direction of where we're going. And I think that's all you can do. I mean, I try really hard not to worry about those things I have no control over, and focus on something that's positive. And it might seem like to me it's very meaningful. I went to a meeting at the Environmental Services Building the other day about a united approach for homelessness for everybody coming together. And in that room was every municipality in Pierce County, everybody trying to figure it out, which is very rewarding. And what filled my heart was, and you should do it right now, is drive down Bridgeport or Cirque. And Ken Grassi was a dear friend and a lovely human being, and the mayor. And beauty was just like Miriam, beauty was one of his core values. And when you drive down that street right now, you will see hundreds, I gave myself goosebumps, hundreds of daffodils blooming. And it just gives you hope. You know, it's someone, you know, thought about a gift in the future to give to everybody. And it's a beautiful thing to focus on, that we'll get through it. And will it be the same? No. Could it be better? Could it be different? Yeah, it could be.
Thanks. How about you, Liz? When you think about it, what kind of advice comes to mind?
Well, yeah, I don't want to be glib and say it'll all be fine, it'll be better, but we did survive the Great Recession, the first Trump administration, and community really did step up and help not completely fill the void necessarily, but people did really step up. And so I think that always gives me hope and encouragement. I'm also a glass half full kind of person. But I think also, going back to some of the things I said earlier, I think people do have to try to do some forecasting so that you're not caught off guard, and to develop some scenarios. I'm serving on another board that gets a substantial amount of federal money, and they're starting this whole scenario planning process where they say, okay, if we lose this particular federal grant, what does that mean? How does that impact staff? How does it impact clients? Are there other funds that we could substitute for that? And they're going to go through that with every federal funding source they have to have a plan if and when that happens, so they're not caught off guard. And so I think that's important to not wait for some catastrophe to happen, but really try to plan and be prepared.
Yeah.
It's a great idea.
How about you, Maureen? What comes to mind?
Well, I think there's always opportunity in crisis. There always is. We just have to see it. Crisis makes you look at the situation you're in differently, makes you maybe retool a little bit. I think giving yourself the space to think about those things differently than you normally would might make you collaborate with somebody that you wouldn't have before. It's getting through the tough times, and I think, this is not the end. This is just another middle of the story. We'll all make it.
Miriam, what do you remember? What do you think of?
I have a couple thoughts. One is it might be a really good time to look at your fundraising plan and look at how diversified it is or isn't, and maybe do some strategic work around that. So once again, you're not taken by surprise, especially if your money is focused in federal grants. But what I really want to say is, and I'm going to acknowledge this isn't always easy, but you just absolutely have to stay at a place of abundance, because that's where hope lives. And if you find yourself going into scarcity thinking, there isn't enough, oh, what am I going to do? The earth, the sky is falling. Then you slip into despair, and despair can be paralyzing. So I just want to share a quick story. So in 2008, when we were in the recession, we had just bought the Wilsonian to turn into our shelter, and the recession hit. First of all, we did not let that slow us down at all. And in fact, what we found is there was quite a bit of funding that we were able to access because other agencies just stopped their projects. They just paralyzed, right? So that ended up working actually in our benefit. But then I got notice that our state money came to the shelter. And most of our other programs were privately funded, but the state funded our shelter, our emergency domestic violence shelter. And we heard that we were going to get a $149,000 cut, which would have closed the shelter. And so my immediate reaction, I actually was in Chicago on vacation at the time, was to paralyze. And then I realized I can't go there. I have to rise into a place of abundance. And so I asked the shelter manager if she would ask the clients in the shelter to come talk to me down the street in the other building. And I met with them, and I told them exactly what was happening, that the state was going to cut our budget, would mean we would have to cut services, but if they would share their story, here comes story again, right? If they would share their story in writing with the governor about what this difference it would mean to not have the shelter, I would pledge to go raise the $149,000 independently from private donors, right? I called it the Compassion Campaign. And so they immediately, like, you should have seen the room. They were sparking, and people are going to die, and they were just on it. And they did that. They wrote down their stories. We can share them confidentially with the governor. There was a response back. It didn't matter if it was a form letter. They thought it was very empowering. And of course, we activated our donor base too to call the governor's office, and did all these things at the same time. And I, at the time, had raised $90,000 of the dollars when we found out our budget wasn't going to get cut one dime. Because the governor's office had heard from our constituents and from our donors more than any other organization. And so then I had to call the donors to see if I could keep the money.
All right.
And they all said yes. Okay. That's abundance right there. Yeah. That's abundance right there.
Miriam, thank you. I needed to hear that. I think we all needed to hear that. And thanks to each of you for being so generous with your successes and with your failures and with your advice. And I'd like to turn it over now, because these are some questions, but each of you have your own experiences, your own challenges. Are there questions that you would like to ask? We're going to play Donahue, and my colleague Joe Hunich is going to be Donahue. So if you have a question, raise your hand. He'll come and bring the microphone. And we have time about another 10 minutes to share if there's anything else you'd like to share.
So I have a question that's less about your org than about you. And being in the executive director role can be lonely and stressful and 24/7. How'd you take care of yourself?
Well, I think the Fab Four is one way we do, and you know, it's not unique to us. Certainly, other people can create their own little circles of support, but that I think helped a great deal to all of us. I think most of us, maybe not Maureen as much, are good about taking time off and getting away. And
Tired yet?
Not when we were working. Oh, definitely not when I was working.
We were all working our 50 or 60
that's
hours.
true. That's true.
Right. But it is a lonely. It can be a lonely job, and you can't let your hair down about what's going on in the office to anyone else in the office, right? You need somebody else to be your sounding board and your support, and somebody that will do tough love to you. Like, why do you still have that person employed? You need to can them. Kind of this, like, I know, but I mean, you need those people that will be honest with you. But I mean, these are my biggest cheerleaders and my best advice. So, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know where we'd be without each other. I mean, and now we do sleepovers and we go on vacations together. And, I was saying I've spent more time with them than anybody in my life that I could choose. I mean, you know, my parents and my children, but I chose these guys. So, it makes a huge difference to be able to And you know, when you have a partner, the problem is they usually want to give you advice on how to fix it. These guys just listen. So I mean, we get to the fixing part, but it's just it really I can't imagine doing it without them. No.
And I think for me, I think it's really important if you don't have something else you love to do other than work, you find something else you love to do other than work. I say that about relationships too. I've been with my husband for 49 years, and it never would have worked if we both didn't have other things we loved other than each other. So for me, my spirit just knows when I have to just stop and do my art. And that's how I keep my balance. And if I don't do it, no one really would want to be around me. So there's that. So yeah, find something else that you can escape to.
I think my opportunity was different than all of these guys in that when I was deciding whether or not it was time for me to officially retire the first time, my board let me get a deputy, and that made all the difference in the world for me. And it doesn't matter that she happens to be sitting here, but that really changed everything for me for the job. That I had a not a 100% peer, but pretty much 100% peer there in my working situation. That made all the difference, and I stayed longer than I had originally thought I would to have that working partner.
Yeah, I'll tell a quick story. So after the 20% layoff disaster, I needed to hire somebody, a management person, to replace two people. I only had money for one, and I decided I wanted an interim to kind of help sort things out. And I went to my friend, Jeannie Darnielle, who had done interim executive director work before, and she would be like a deputy, so it's a little different. But the timing was great. The legislative session was over, and she was able to come, and she made a huge difference because, again, she was interim, so she could do things and pave the way for a permanent person. She was also, having been executive director, she was very straightforward with me about things that I could be doing differently, and that was a great gift, and I will always appreciate that. And yeah, whether it's a deputy or an interim person, both of those things can be very helpful, I think. Yeah.
Thank you. That's a good question. Any other question? Any other fabulous question to conclude this? You've got a brilliant question just on the tip of your tongue, and you're just about to ask it. Yeah, here we go. Here it is.
Okay.
Brilliant question down front.
So, different generations, different lived experience, staff that show up are so different. Not everybody wants to work 50, 60 hours a week. Not everybody wants the job just to be everything that they have. So managing that post-COVID has been a real experience. And I don't know if you have any advice on, I'm not saying managing diversity. I'm just saying we all show up as different people, and the ability to give has limited in some, and yet when they can give, it's so powerful. I think that's a hard thing to balance. Any words of advice?
We have a policy at Habitat, and this is why I'm retiring, because I think everybody might hate it, and I probably don't fit well with people that don't show up 100%. It's no whining. No whining and no gossiping. We just don't. And I understand that there is a concept about bringing your whole self to work, bringing your problems with your, and I'm kind of like, that's not the school I came from. You're here to serve others. This is a serving position, not about you position. So again, I am retiring. So anybody that is showing up with that not 100% mission-driven attitude, I have to say we haven't had much of that, and we have. It's weird to have employees younger than my own children. It makes me feel. I'll use colloquialisms or weird sayings, and they'll go, "What does that mean?" And but I think there is building that culture, the culture of support, but the culture of expectation is both important.
I just think humans are complicated. And I don't have a great answer other than COVID, leading through COVID, which probably most of you also did, was the hardest thing, especially running a essential organization that couldn't close. Where, well, parts of it could close, and those people could go home, but not others. And I don't know if I'll ever really recover from that, from those years. And I can only imagine and have great empathy for what it's like now, because I know there's still that struggle of, well, I got to work from home, I don't want to come back to the office. And maybe that's okay, and maybe that works better for your workplace, but I get my energy off of people. So I didn't do well when I was alone in a building during COVID, trying to keep an organization running, right? So I don't have a great answer for you, but I have great empathy.
Yeah, this is my 4th interim position, and I did COVID with Workforce Central, so there was all hands on deck, everybody trying to do everything, and I had the honor of being at Palmer Scholars. It's just you're just warms your heart to be there. Now at the Human Services, I said to a group of them the other day, when my dad kept saying, get a real job, which of course means something with a pension, I said, I had no idea I could do heart work and get a real job. Why didn't I figure that out? But I also was at the Art Museum. I now know who my people are and my people aren't to work with for sure. What they do is lovely. It's just not what fills my heart. And I had one person, and I have a coaster that someone gave me that said, my patients have been tested and I'm negative. So,
That's great.
you know that person, huh, Michelle? And I asked someone in the development department, or development directors was talking to people, and I said, could you do this? Oh, it's not my job description. Really? It's about raising money, and that's what you guys do? No, not my job description. So the toilet was overflowing the next day, and I fixed it, and I came to her and said, I have something to share. I just fixed the toilet, and I can guarantee you it's not in my job description. So let's figure out how we work let's look at the mission. Let's both look at the mission and see. But yeah, I have people who are working for me now who are younger than my granddaughter. So yeah, it's really interesting, and to get to the trust part, because we are used to being around people, and they're home for 8 hours a day. Really? But it works so well for some people, so. But it's difficult. No words of how to fix it.
Well, and this is an appropriate way to come to a conclusion, because that's actually what happens. We share, and we're like, yeah, no, you're going to have to tell us. This is where it leans to you, and where you can begin to formulate that advice, build those stories, and hopefully share them with other people here, the other people in Pierce County, and very soon we may be back up here and you'll be sharing this kind of advice as well. It's how Pierce County works. Yep. That's who we are. Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you Helen McGovern Pilant, thank you Liz Dunbar, thank you Maureen Fife, thank you Miriam Barnett for joining us today. I want to thank KBTC for giving us a space and helping us share this learning, not just today, but for a long time to come. I, of course, want to thank each and every one of you in our live studio audience. Is there any chance we could get just a little bit of laugh track? Gold star. We'll run that through. Okay. A little applause?
Oh, thank you.
Awesome. And I'd also like to thank the staff of Greater Tacoma Community Foundation, who we've got here at all places, who made sure that we had all this, and who have a wonderful reception outside for you to have some time to get to know each other and keep building that community that makes Pierce County such a cool place to live and work. Thanks, everybody.
And thank you, Megan.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity.